last time in the FNCS North America West. At 152 points, NA West had the highest needed points to auto-qualify across all regions. Despite having 152 points, Fruit and Tiny missed out due to losing the tiebreaker for 8th place. With 17 FNCS finals, including their recent back-to-back first-place finishes, Favs and Snacky have more finals combined than any other NA West duo competing in the semifinals. Between both qualifiers, only 4 teams failed to auto-qualify while still grabbing a victory royale. Evil Buzzo, J Roses E22, Nav C Mapra, and Fade Zare. Will past success translate to a trip to the finals? Find out in the FNCS NA West. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the FNCS Chapter 3 Season 1. It's the semifinals Day 1. 16 teams have already moved forward to the finals, but we need to find the 34 remaining teams that will be joining them there next week. I'm going to be your host for today. Hello, Kelly Link. And if you guys got to see any of the action last week or earlier today between Europe and NA East, then you guys know that you're in for some crazy Fortnite fun. But of course, I can't be doing this alone, everyone, so let's bring on our 2 analysts for the show today. And of course, who other than Panda and Takata. Panda, it is so good to have you on here for the FNCS show. I'm so excited. Just watching Europe and NA East today, I know that we're in for something great.
Absolutely. Incredible game start to finish there. And big pop-off and clutch games there for Vino and Peterbot, for example. So hoping to see some more of that here on the West Coast. But Tokado, what you got in mind for today's games?
Oh, just like you were saying, we've had some incredible other regions playing off, some clutches happening in Europe and NA East, and now we're just waiting to see what happens here on NA West. A lot of top duos competing today, so I'm excited to see how it turns out.
And of course, we love you guys joining us here in the chat, watching with us. But maybe you guys want something a little more for your FNCS experience. Well, you guys can go to Legends Landing. It is an incredible experience. You can not only watch what's going on in the FNCS, but look at this here, Takata. There is so much to experience.
So much to explore, so much to experience. You can see here some clips from the box fight from watching the FNCS while you're in game. So if you get a little hyped up, you see Peterbot clutch it up on NA East, you say, I want to do that. Go into the box fights, practice your mechanic skills, practice those game sense situations from watching the broadcast. I mean, you can do it all. You can practice anything you need to do in Legends Landing.
But of course, that's Legends Landing, everyone. Check that out by the Buy Epic and the Exploration tab there. But we have to talk about what we're here. Why are we even here right now, and how did we get here? Well, we already had our qualifiers 1 and 2. This is the semifinals day, everyone. And it's just day number 1. As you can see, we have 3 days of semifinals action because we need to find which 34 teams are going to be joining the 16 that made it through qualifier 1 and 2. And of course, all of this leads up to next week, March 5th and 6th. Put that in your calendars because that's the finals. But Panda, there's a lot to get into about how this tournament format is broken down.
Yeah, like you said, qualifier 1 and 2 is done. It's all about the semifinals now, and there's so much on the table. If you don't know, 5 teams are going to move forward with victory royales, and on top of that, 6 players or 6 teams that are consistent will also make it through today. Now, again, Tokata, you got to break down these points, man. Tell them how they're going to be able to get through today.
Oh, it's looking different today in the semifinals. You can see 1,000 points for the Victory Royale. That looks a little strange. That's because if you're able to secure a Victory Royale, if you're one of the 5 duos that gets a Victory Royale, you get a golden ticket straight to the finals. Also, just like the round 3s in the qualifying stages, it's 3 points per elimination. So you get rewarded a lot more heavily if you're able to secure those eliminations in the late game.
It really does reward both types of teams, which we typically see in the FNCS. Those that have kind of hot and cold days where they're able to grab a VR with 20 eliminations and then for some reason get eliminated on drop. And those teams, of course, that can be consistent. And speaking of teams, here we have, Panda, the teams that we're going to be watching today in the first day of semifinals.
Absolutely. And actually, you saw them in the replays leading up to us coming on the broadcast. It's actually E22 and J Roses, one of those teams that know how to get VRs, and they know how to do it in spectacular fashion. So I expect to see some big VR wins for them today. But there are so many incredible names here. You got Caleb and Kenzo. You got Clutches and Smuck. You got so many talented players making it to this point. So I'm excited to get into these games today.
I'm also super hyped to see how this turns out. I saw some other names up there. Landjock Punisher, Snacky Fabs. I even saw Beast Tautai. There's a lot of duos that we've seen in previous competitions that are competing here again now in the semifinals, and I'm excited to see what they can pull off.
So many incredible teams and incredible players that are going to be competing today. And with having all of this high intelligence players, we had to, of course, pick their brain a little bit and see if they had any information that they could share with all of you and, of course, with us here on the broadcast. So without further ado, let's take a quick look at some pro tips from our NOS pros.
When it comes to VOD reviews, you never really want to VOD review by yourself, having someone else in the call with you, because a lot of the times you think doing one thing might be right and it might actually be wrong.
For VOD reviews, either we go over our own gameplay from like a previous tournament, or we'll go over someone who won a tournament, like a really good player, and we'll try to spot out things that they're doing that we're not.
Watch the main points of the game, so like the early game, right? The mid game, take notes from like how they're positioning, and then the end game, right? Noting how they're moving through the zones, and just writing like quick little notes of what they're doing, like little like the single line.
And then obviously from our gameplay, we just like to see what mistakes we're making and make sure we don't make them again.
I think a lot of new players may fall behind if they don't get their map knowledge.
Visual sound effects are really strong right now. There's not even hiding spots anymore because of those visual sound effects. You can just hear people from all the way across the map.
It may not be new, but it's definitely being less utilized. Being able to use pre-edits to your advantage in duos is very useful when it comes to getting impacts.
I think it's definitely better to go to the center. That way you don't have to rotate as far and you're able to see pretty much throughout the whole zone when you need surge.
It's definitely better to stick to the edge, because if you get lobbied in center zone, there's no living.
It is better to stick towards the edge of the zone, because if you rotate in too early, then you might end up getting shot by other people.
So center of the storm is generally good if you need storm surge, or if you want to secure yourself a good position so that the next rotate is easy. But if it's a game where you are okay on storm surge, edge storm is a really good place to just stay low key and get your mats back up.
One tip that I would recommend to a player that is trying to aspire to be pro is to create content.
Treating it like a job is a good way to put it.
Number one, always make sure you're having fun, right? Like, don't overstress yourself. Don't ever like lose motivation.
To look at the strategies of what really good players are doing, you need to understand the zones if you want to do really well.
We always love to hear from our pros there. So thank you guys so much for joining us and answering some questions that I'm sure a lot of the people that are watching want to know. And as our residential pro, Takata, I have to ask you, the question that interested me the most is, do you want to be in the center of zone or the edge of zone? So what do you think the answer is?
Well, I thought it was funny because we had some, contradicting answers there from the pro players, and it's a very situational case. Just like Wheels was saying, if you want to get your Storm Surge tags, it can be good to get centered zone. Also, if you have a good drop spot, like what Epic Whale and Arkham do in Coney Crossroads, which is a very centered map, and you get a majority of the zones, you can rotate early and get a good position. However, if you drop on the edges of the maps, maybe Sleepy Sounds or locations that are a little more outskirts, it's a lot more difficult to get an early rotate, and you might up getting focused. And it's kind of just depends on the style of duo you are, the place you drop at, and kind of your overall strategy. But it's a different way you can play the game.
And Panda, as someone that is very involved in the content that Fortnite produces, what is, obviously VOD reviewing is something that's been prevalent in all esports, but what is something that players may not realize that they're doing wrong when VOD reviewing, and what would you suggest for them to do?
Well, I think Quinn mentioned it right there in that content piece, and it was having somebody else there with you when you do VOD review. A lot of times players are like, you know what, I really want to focus on the mistakes that I made. Let me go back and look at this VOD from X time to X time. But in reality, unless you have like different perspectives looking at the same thing with you, it can definitely impact whether or not it actually helps overall. So it really boils down to having somebody there with you, especially somebody that's knowledgeable of the game, understands, and may have a different point than you may think of at the time.
Having a partner with you is very important. It's especially important in our duos competition. So right now we're going to be focusing on some of the duos that we're excited to watch, and more importantly, looking at where they're going to be dropping, because of course there's so many elements that go into being a great player, but the drop spot tends to be one of the more important ones. So the first team that we're going to be looking at right now is Beast and Tao Tai Panda. And I mean, this team right here has been a consistent front runner in a lot of the competitions in the last chapter of the FNCS.
Well, it's no question that Sleepy Sound is one of the best POIs on the map. So for them to have this to them, not necessarily to themselves, but have this as an option is going to be super important. They've obviously spent the season prepping from this spot here, and coming back to it, I think they're definitely going to have a good chance here of doing well. Again, I believe this is one of the spots that is contested, so it's going to be pretty tough for them. However, we've seen a lot of teams this season win out of contested drop spots.
Oh, yeah. I mean, with the fact that there's 50 teams competing compared to the 33 from last chapter, and there's less POIs than we saw in the previous map, there's definitely going to be some contestation, as we love to say here on the FNCS broadcast. But earlier we talked a little bit about a team that we've typically seen in the FNCS. Now I want to talk about a team that we don't talk too much about, and it goes by Gosh and Sharp Takata. Tell me a little bit about this team and where we're going to be seeing them drop.
Yeah, so Gosh and Sharp are dropping on the southern part of the map in Condo Canyon, but what's good about their drop is they drop on the north side of Condo Canyon, and there's another two duos contesting this side that we're seeing on the screen right now, which is the more southern side of Condo Canyon. So that's a good opportunity to make use of that contestation and go for some third parties. They can get some tags in the early game, and they won't have to worry too much about Storm Surge later on in the further zone. So if they play their cards right, we could see them in the late game consistently.
Oh, without a doubt. And much like a pendulum swings, I'm going to go back to probably one of the most prestigious teams that we have. And in fact, they are 2/3 of the last two FNCS champions, Favs and Snacky. And Panda, I'm sure you have a lot to say about them.
Absolutely. After them being champions there in Season 8 FNCS, they did some big things, right? And they're looking to replicate that here in Chapter 3 Season 1. And they're actually using Greasy Grove as their drop of choice. Again, another spot that's going to have some players around them, so they need to be careful how they handle this. It didn't quite work out in their favor throughout the qualifiers, but they're here today to show that they are still talented players and they know exactly how to walk away on top.
But those right there were just the drop spots. What we're not focusing on are the fights that we're going to be seeing, because as we just said just a few moments ago, there is going to be a lot of drop spot fights right off the gate. So let's actually focus right now on the Cami split, which is so hilarious to me because obviously in Chapter 2, everyone heard everything about the Cami split. We have a whole new map now, and somehow there is still a Cami split. So let's look at that right now between Remy versus Nico Takata.
Yeah, the problem with these contests at split drops is that you have to take that engagement, because when you're doing a split drop, there's not as much loot as like a Tilted Towers, as a Daily Bugle. You really only have enough loot for one duo. So if you're contested in a split drop like Cami Split, you have to take that engagement, and one duo is going to come out on top.
Now, I kind of want to break real quick and talk a little bit about something that we saw, oh gosh, I believe it was from Europe, where one team won off of a spot that was contested, and then the following team from that spot won as well, no longer being contested. So, Panda, let's say that you're one of these teams and someone grabs a VR that's contesting your spot. Does a new team try and jump in there and contest them again, or does that team, do they stick to that new spot?
Yeah, I believe you're talking about Thomas HD and Tayson, and then Vino and Joe. That's what happened, right? Thomas HD, Tayson, they lost first game, but then the next two games, that drop was in their favor, and then they walked away with the VR. Then right immediately after, Joe and Vino walk away with the VR as well. So it just shows that just because you go down early doesn't necessarily mean that you're in a bad spot, right? On top of that, we're going to see a lot of changes like that, especially over the days. Because remember, while we're going through today, we're going to lose some teams here, but then more teams fill in tomorrow for the teams that have already qualified. So it's going to be interesting to see how these teams can kind of adjust to these map spots opening throughout the weekend. But it's going to be pretty exciting, to say the least.
It's definitely going to be exciting, and we already talked about one split, but now I want to talk about another, and it's the Llama split. That's going to be Elder versus G5RC. So, Takata, tell me a little bit about this split that we're seeing here.
So this split does have that guaranteed llama. We saw some other very top tier West duos like Wheels and Batman Booga making use of this split to get that llama every game, get that mobility with the chili chug splashes, and obviously get those materials quickly so you don't have to farm up as much and you can start rotating sooner. However, just like the previous split drop, if you're contested in a split, you're going to have to battle that opposing duo. So hopefully, I mean, they can play their cards right, whichever duo has practiced more, and we'll see who comes out on top.
I mean, we've just talked about so many different POIs on the map. I'm sure for people that are just joining us right now, they might be a little confused. But you know what? We have so many incredible pros here at the NA West that we, of course, had to pick their brain. So let's see what they have to say about our map guide.
One of the best spots on the map right now is Tilted returning. They added a bunch of cool things with Tilted. There's a lot more chest and farming ability there, so it's definitely one of the best spots on the map right now.
Condo Canyon, 4 supply drops and like a bunch of henchman chests in the vault that they have. It is super, super good.
Daily Bugle is probably the best spot on the map. There's Spider-Man there, and there's like the most chest spawns too.
Just because it has so many, like the Spider-Man gauntlets, they're really, really good right now.
Tilted coming back is one of the best things that Fortnite could have done.
I think it's really cool it's coming back. Just get straight into the action because all the boys are going to Tilted every game, and so it's just a good time. I like the addition of it.
I was actually so happy to see Tilted back. The layout is like literally the exact same.
Oh, I love it. I used to be an avid Tilted Towers lander.
It really does make the game feel like the OG days.
It being back in the game is really nostalgic. I think the logjam is pretty good. It has a lot of really fast farming mats that you can get and a lot of loot there in general.
The Joneses is one of the spots that I feel like is actually slept on because it has everything that you need to win the game.
Greasy Grove, that's pretty OP. Well, there's just a lot of floor loot and a lot of chests. Not very many people land there.
Right now, there's a lot of split drops on the map that have a ton of loot overall that kind of get ignored because they're not a POI.
It's gotta be the Spider-Man gauntlet.
Definitely Spider-Man.
Definitely Spider-Man.
I think it's really crucial, especially in the end game. You can rotate with it really well.
Swinging everywhere, it's super fluid, it's super smooth. Literally go across the map in half a second. Boom.
Map awareness is super important.
Literally the difference from doing good and doing bad.
Like marking on the map to know like the terrain for moving zones, it's really useful.
Just knowing where people usually rotate from, where people usually box up on mountains, stuff like that. Having that map awareness will make rotating and just getting to where you want to be a lot cleaner.
If you can get a lead on other players and really study the map, all the spawns sort of thing, you have a really big advantage.
Definitely being able to know all locations on the map is going to be useful because Zone can honestly pull anywhere. When it comes to picking a drop spot, most of the time you got to realize who else is landing there or around you. Being able to realize who your opponents are when it comes to drop spot and what their weaknesses are is really important, and making sure that it plays to your advantages.
Who's going to be landing there? Can you beat them? And does have enough loot is a good thing to keep in mind.
If you're more of a passive player, you can definitely make something on the edge of the map work. Like there's a lot of spots that have rifts on them right now, which are actually pretty decent spots. You can definitely make it work. But if you're more of an aggro player, you like to fight, landing a POI is always a good option.
Big shout outs to Quinn, Wheels, and all of our incredible pros that just stopped for a moment and were able to give all their incredible insight of their pro knowledge. But I do want to talk to you guys a little bit about one of the questions that they were asked about Daily Bugle. Obviously, it is an incredibly pivotal POI, but why is that, Panda?
Well, obviously, it has to do with the way that it's laid out. It actually reminds me a lot of Tilted Towers. Obviously, that came first here this season, and then we got the surprise of Tilted melting under the ice. But it reminds me a lot as far as the layout and the loot path. Now, what I will say, the advantage here over Tilted is the Spider-Man web shooters. This thing, obviously, is very, very valuable for these pro players. With only 10 uses in it, though, you have to be super smart in the way that you use it. You have to make sure that you're grabbing the gauntlets, you're not using them early in mid-game, you're saving them for the end-game, and when you do save them for the end-game, use them for very specific things. If you need a refresh, use it to get the loot from the ground. If you need to rotate, use it for rotations. But remember to prioritize between those two things because, guess what? 10 uses isn't a lot.
You know, I feel like at the start of the chapter, a lot of people were saying that actually the gauntlets weren't really used towards endgame. And then, of course, after Europe, we saw Vino with that incredible VR play, using the web shooter to get down to the low ground, kind of surprise the opponents and get 2 eliminations. But Takata, that seems to have changed, where now it looks like the Spider-Man web shooters are actually used a bit more towards the endgame.
Yeah, I mean, just like Panda was saying, you want to prioritize the Spider-Man web shooters for that end game. If you have to use them in the early mid-game, it's probably because you have to disengage from an engagement very quickly, and it's in a situation you just really cannot be in. But making use of them in the late game can be very effective as well, because you conserve a lot of materials, you conserve a lot of shields, because you won't get tagged as likely when you're targeting. So it's a good thing to use, and that's why Daily Bugle is so powerful. It has the loot and it has the mobility with the Spider-Man web shooters.
Something else that's good to use, a lot of newer players don't really think about, is map awareness. And of course, we heard a lot about from our pros there. But Panda, I want to know a bit more about what your thoughts are on map awareness. When there's 49 other teams competing against you, how can you even really be aware of what's going on around the map?
Absolutely. So obviously going into the day, you need to know what other major pro players that you think could potentially get to whatever round that you're aiming for, right, will be there. And you need to know who's going to land with you. It doesn't matter if it's round 1 of qualifier 1, right, or it's the semifinals. You got to know what's going on in that region of where you're going to land. On top of that, you need to make sure you have a great path position and you do not veer from that path. You have to stay to it. Make sure you hit your path accordingly, because getting in and out of your POI and getting all the loot necessary is super important to do in an efficient time.
Now, of course, everyone, I'm sure you all have a team in your heart and your mind of who you think is going to be walking away into the finals later today. But of course, we got to talk about our own predictions here on the show, not just for the 3 of us, but the 2 casters as well. And I'm going to go with apparently a very specific pick, Notch and Hav. If you guys watch the Cash Cups at all, they've actually had an incredible top 10 performance the last 2 Cash Cups. So that right there is going to be my pick. But obviously, Panda, Takata, you guys are going with the easy pick, Panda.
Okay, I wouldn't say the easy pick, but I do like your pick as well. I do want to say Notch, Hove, an interesting duo this season, and both have a lot of potential. If they can work together very well, make sure they focus on getting to the end game, they have tons of time to do it. Now, Snacky and Fabs obviously is the choice here. The reason I say that is they are so good together. They have more chemistry across the board than a majority of the teams we've seen. The fact that they didn't make it through qualifiers is a little surprising, but they're going to make up for it today.
Definitely. Also, to add on to that, they also have Greasy uncontested. Their duo, which is most close to them, is Landjock Punisher, doing the split on the south side of Greasy. So they will be able to get Storm Surge tags if needed. And just like Panda was saying, their confidence mechanically is definitely there. So I would not be surprised if we see them qualified today.
Clay is also going to be going with Favs and Snacky, and obviously we see Jacob PR here with Epic, Cyrazer, and Nico, but I actually want to focus a bit more on Favs and Snacky here and how they are as a duo, because Panda, you kind of said something really interesting there, is that you don't know why they didn't make it through the qualifiers 1 and 2, and there's a lot of teams that actually didn't make it there, so I kind of want to know your opinion on how duos is affecting the pro scene here for NA West.
I think for players that are picking up new teammates, it's definitely different, right? I think it kind of plays into, hey, I'm not used to duos. Now I'm playing with a new person. So chemistry is everything. That's why I think teams like Snacky and Fabs, who have played together in the past, are definitely going to make a dent in these semifinals.
And Takata, real quick, is there anything that you want to see here in game number 1?
Oh, I want to see another solo clutch like we saw in the previous regions. We had Venno on Europe, Peterbot on NA East, so who's going to do it on NA West? That's what I'm waiting for.
I mean, we already saw it during the qualifiers, a lot of solo clutches there. So if there's any time to pull them out, it is right now, whereas a VR can just give you the ticket into the finals. But everyone, that's going to be it for us on the desk here. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us, but now it's time to hang out with 2 new cool dudes. It's Jacob and Clay.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And you are right, it is Jacob and me this time around. We get to bring the very first day of semifinals to everybody for NA West, and I am so excited after those 2 regions we just watched. Jacob, we're in for a treat.
No, we're definitely in for a treat. Excuse me, but those 2 clutches that Kelly was talking about, I expect West. There's a lot more fighting that does go on in the later games, especially with how much is on the line. It's win and you're in. How exciting is that? So it's going to be a real treat to see how these players differ their strategies, especially in the early portions of the game. If it's not going your way, you might have no other choice to go for that victory royale in the end.
We'll have to see as these games are just about to get underway. I cannot wait for it.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot at stake in it. And I like the way you guys kind of went with the favorites, Favs and Snacky. And it's a little bit of a safe pick, I may say, but the battle bus is ready. We can see how safe that game is because game number 1 is on our hands.
Game number 1, NA West semifinals. Last opportunity for some of these players this week to make it into that finals. This is just the first day. We've got 2 more after this, but getting it out of the way today would be amazing. It would be a weight lifted off of everyone's shoulders. Let's see, as UA, Bumboy, are they going to be part of that elite squad going all the way through to the finals, or are they going to go down early as we swap over? A team very contested, and Jacob, it's not looking good on either front.
It's almost interesting to see, what was going to be one of our contested drops on that llama split, and a team already changing up the game plans. It could be nerves, but it could be brains as well, not wanting to kind of risk it all in that 50-50. This is a marathon, it's not a race, and there's so many ways to qualify. You don't want to force yourself in a bad position early on, and already another team, or 2 teams I should say, choosing to kind of concede that drop spot. They realize there's so much on the line, but this is kind of usual. This is like the classic when it comes to NA West. Slow gameplay to start us off.
Get a chance to see what they're grabbing out of one of these bolts. Really good for this early game portion, right? You get shields, you get those ARs, okay, sniper rifles as well. And, oh, look at that legendary and epic loot coming through. But look, unfortunately, Compalomp and Algalore looking pretty weak over at Chonker Speedway. We saw them in the qualifiers fight here often, every single match. It seems like that kit will be found for Compalomp there. Aguilar will be able to heal up to almost full HP. Has a lot of extra minis in this, using just to, it was just a couple. I thought it was going to be a couple stacks there, and they were choosing not to take it there, but no.
Yeah.
Good min-maxing from him.
This might be a little bit blessing in disguise, though, even though it doesn't look like they're going to back down of Chonker Speedway just yet. Getting tagged too early might make you play a little slave. And when there's more than one team fighting around, playing a little slave, having to heal up might be that blessing. You don't want that chaos to go ahead and ensue too quickly, because it's 5 games on our hands played, and that's something we were kind of messaging each other back and forth instead of 6. So it's very, very easy to put yourself in a hole, get lost in the sauce, and forget that there's one less game to try and qualify. So that's something I'm going to really kind of play into towards the later half, maybe games number 3, games number 4, and then definitely in that 5th and final game.
Favs and Snacky completely uncontested Greasy Grove, and like Kelly said in the recap, they have more FNCS final appearances than any other duo in semis. They've been to the final 17 times.
That's dominant. That's consistency. And I can see why 3 of our analysts and casters kind of picked Favs and Snacky, but Scizor, one of those players, his teammate is already going to go down. The aggression from, it might have been Russo and his teammate, Winner, I do believe, trying to go ahead and finish off these eliminations. These are 2 players as well. Finished 15th, and I do believe 10th in 2 different qualifiers, barely missing the gap, but with those early eliminations, probably going to be looking for the second one. This is a great way to start off your semifinals.
And again, a reminder, there's 2 different stories being played out at this exact same time. It is both about winning the game and making sure that if you don't win the game, you get a lot of points. But CZR, it's going to take a lot of damage, but puts a good amount back onto Russo. Then Russo going to go down. What? A clutch play almost coming through, but Winter going to be there to clutch up for the team.
Yeah, these guys, like I said, 2 different finals appearances in qualifier number 1 and number 2. For them, those are a little bit of learning experiences to go ahead and make the semifinals theirs. Like Clay said, multiple chances to get into that grand finals and punch your ticket. But Kaizen and Chicken with the high ground, you got to imagine very, very light on surge tags, and they go and looks like they're trying to form a sandwich. This could be a great opportunity to at least get the damage you're looking for, or take these players out altogether.
Hound going to be caught off guard. Chicken trying to put some shots down with that MK7. Not able to connect any, but they've got him pinched perfectly. They got to be careful to look at another duo coming from behind them as well. If they win another duo behind that duo, and Prism is going to recognize that, they're going to go aggressive onto Chicken, but Chicken's going to cut that line just a little bit there. Shots will come through. Nice connection there. 71 damage. Chicken is doing a great job at holding him off as a solo. That's going to be good damage. His teammate came through, taking down Prism. Now only Hound remaining. They come together perfectly, and just look at that chemistry.
Yep, back-to-back eliminations. Taking a share of first place for now, though. It is still very, very early on. But for a second there, you can see why their opposition tried to swarm on that fight. They had them separated. There was a lot of space between the two, but like you said, Chicken holding on to that high ground, creating separation, and buying his teammate time to go over and make the play. And it looks like another big battle down towards this split as Nick Jaw Combat on screen. It looks like they're going to try to chase down Combat. Don't know where that first elimination went, but they're surely trying to grab this second one as they continue to hold on to that high ground. Zeno taking a little bit too much damage, but Combat is going to go down regardless. And that's going to be another elimination going down here on West.
And West does play a little bit more aggressive than
right?
we normally see, right? I like it. I like this. It sets the pace and the tone for the rest of the lobby, because here's the thing about West. I mean, if we look back at the reboot rounds as well, right, back from previous seasons, that first game was always still a little bit more aggressive than the rest, because everyone knows, hey, if I win, I'm good. All I got to do is win. So they can play this like they normally would play any other tournament in opens and round number one, qualifiers, right, and semifinals. Normally you have to play a little bit more cautious. You're caring about that 6 games, but right now it's game to game to game. That's what you're thinking about. These 5 games are each individually separate, but also tied together. So it's unlike anything we've ever seen, and I'm really, really loving the pace West is setting.
Yeah, this is where you take your own destiny in your own hands, and there's many ways to do that here, but Elder and Statics, they're going to try to do it by getting this elimination, put themselves up in a great position, not having to worry about that storm surge, but a little bit of high ground, multiple players towards the outside that could affect this fight or try to get some tags of their own. That's why these players are trying to box up. They're trying to bait them in, play as safe as possible. And if you look at a lot of the resources, they have mats, yes, but they don't have a ton of that shotgun ammo to go ahead and have a continued fight.
And with ammo, out of all the ones that is concerning, I think, to lose the most, it's the shotgun, right?
Yep.
Like, you run out of AR ammo, that's fine. You run out of SMG ammo, that's fine. Shotgun ammo, there's not a lot you could do. You've got the harpoon, which is my favorite weapon in the entire game, and you can use it effectively like a shotgun. But this season with the shotgun like the heavy and how much damage it does, it's just really outmatched. So they really got to play it carefully. They don't want to be too aggressive. And even then, like, you see him single firing these MK7s, but 160 ammo on MK7, that's still concerning as well. So aggression is going to come through. The edit down from Gooey will be enough, but his teammate not there. No, as I say that, his teammate right back, and unfortunately the shot's just not connecting in their favor.
I love what Elder was doing, hiding in that cone, waiting for that perfect opportunity for them to get lost in the sauce on a couple of targets, but it might be a decision they can soon regret, as the shield is going to get dropped off, but that's not going to deter Elder from this exchange. But I think knowing multiple players are on the outside trying to affect this fight, they might have got the tags they wanted. They don't have too many shields to spread around, so they're just going to take what they can get. They realize so much is on the line. Going down this early starts to dig that hole that I was talking about early on. You put yourself too far in a hole, the only way out of it is a victory royale at the end of the day.
And it's a great way to describe the fact that they're disengaging here, right? They don't have enough to keep going, but they also don't really have enough to disengage. They're really going to have to get lucky with their loot, because they are so far on the outside of the map. Everything there is going to be looted. Maybe they can grab some stuff from Camp Cuddle, maybe move their way over to Covert Cavern, as we're going to see where the second zone goes. No, they're not going to be able to contest that, so they're running out of options.
Yeah, definitely running out of options. I think they're going to have to make the decision now, or another option could be later on the game trying to find a solo player, maybe look up a refresh opportunity, but we talked about 116. Elder doesn't even have a full clip in his NK7, so when it comes to that far range, he's not going to have it on him. Kind of hoping for his teammates, a Sharp and Gosh. I would say I don't know too much about this duo, but when you kind of have us as casters not knowing too much about a duo, that's a perfect opportunity for this duo to let the world know who they are.
Exactly. I think that's one of the best things, like you mentioned, about this format that you're able to do, right? You can come out, win a game, make it all the way to finals, which you previously haven't been able to do before because of an entirely new format and a new chapter that rewards different types of play styles. So I'm very excited to keep our eyes on Sharp and Gosh as we move over Tao Tai and Beast. Normally Tao Tai playing with wheels, but they're swapping it up a little bit. Tao Tai's been around West for a very long time, so you know he knows how to make it to the finals, but the execution needs to be there. And talking about a duo that's been around for a very long time, it's going to be Landjock and Punisher.
Yeah, you know, making my debut in qualifier number 1. I was kind of expecting to see some of these big names, and I had made sure to let him know, hey, it's going to be a pleasure to cast you. Hopefully, you can pick up some big games. And he said, hey, I agree with you. It is going to be a minefield out there. It's going to be something that it's not going to be easy to traverse to, as they're just trading for the tags. And that's the experience you're talking about. Not to all in, not to put themselves in a bad spot, especially since they don't even know there's so many duos around.
Ooh. It's going to be awkward if they run into Russo, and I think they're going to be able to just sneak on by. Those shots will be fired in their direction as Nico and the Psy Razor here on the edge. This is a really bad spot.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. If everyone gets on that other side of the land, which it looks like it is, and they're going to cut them off, this is, oh no.
Oh, ooh. And things just get worse. 124 below the damage threshold. And the thing that makes this spot so worse to me is that they're just in the middle of the ocean. They're on an island. So not only do they have to traverse around, the building's going to get a little shaky. It's going to be hard for them. But at the same time, they could be just trying to look for those tags, and a team that doesn't have to worry about it because of that aggressive play to get the tags early on in the game, and they found themselves a good spot outside of Tilted, is Snacky and Fabs. But I don't think that surprises anybody.
I don't think so either. I feel like everyone has a lot of expectation on Snacky and Fabs, right? They have this preconceived notion of they are FNCS winners in the past, so of course they're going to do well. But again, new format, new season, new chapter, new entire meta. You've got to play a little bit differently. They were always very hyper aggressive, so this might be their chance to make it into finals. This is a hyper aggressive format. Because again, if you win, you're good to go. As Clux and Shades trying to get as close to people as they can without taking as much damage, because again, they are below Surge. 12 below is going to be Gosh and Sharp. They've got to get this damage in 40 seconds before it starts activating and taking their HP away. And no, they're going to end it down to teammate. Gosh is unfortunately go all the way in. No, that's going to be Sharp, as Gosh made the unfortunate mistake of editing them down and somehow, some way, able to get back up. Very low HP, but they got the med miss, so they're chilling.
Yeah, I'm even at a loss for words how he was able to get back up, but Sharp, man, that's how you create your own destiny. We talked about not really knowing too much about him. That's how you start to catch the eye. But you like how they're also not backing down. They realize they still have some more damage to cover. Trey, another great person that I know about, kind of getting coached a little bit on the side, making sure they have that third eye view, but the damage is definitely in. They're trying to do just enough so they don't have to worry about Storm Surge, slapping down that steel wall for some extra cover. And this is going to be the moment they have to breathe, but they're only going to breathe so much as they drop down below the damage threshold yet again.
And the steel wall, the armored wall, is one of the most amazing items when you're in this situation, right? It's the biggest denial of anything there. You're getting shot? No, I'm not getting shot. I have an armored wall, but look, they go through their base, and Trey is going to capitalize on this. No, not going to be able to do so, and neither is their teammate. Unfortunately, Nickjaw and Zeno just pushed too aggressively, too quickly. They close the distance, close the gap, and they take them down.
Yeah, that's very, very unfortunate, but I know that's one of those duos. They land at the northern portion of the map, uncontested, a little bit of a split drop. So you can see that kind of what that does. We saw it on qualifier number 1 with Quinn and Wave. It took a big game, a big strategy switch up in game number 5, but it definitely worked out for them. Wave popping off at the end as a solo to punch their ticket to the grand final, so they don't have to go through this battlefield that is the semifinals. You see a bunch of eliminations still racking up in your elimination feed, but for those teams that might have escaped now for Surge, they need to start thinking of a plan how to gain it.
And unfortunately, one of the teams that I'm rooting for is going to be Tiny and Fruit. They did end up falling. They, again, like Kelly said, were 1 point off, essentially tied. They tied, and the tiebreaker